Adult animation is sort of having a boom right now. There's a number of cartoons that are aimed squarely at adults with a bit more brutality than most cartoons would have. Let's talk about it. What's up? I'm Seyr, and welcome to my corner of the internet. And on this episode, episode 2, we're going to be discussing a little animation by the name of Invincible. So, let me give you a little backstory on who created Invincible. Basically, Invincible is an adult animation series that is distributed on Prime Video, Amazon Prime Video, and it was created by Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker, and Ryan Otley. And these are the same people who also created the comic book that the series is based on, rather. And then the series stars Steven Yeun as Mark, Sandra Oh as Debbie, and J.K. Simmons as Nolan. These are the Graysons. And the series is produced by Kirkman's own Skybound Entertainment production company in collaboration with Wind Sun Sky International, Point Grey Pictures, and Amazon MGM Studios, of course. The first season premiered March 25th, 2021. Alright, let's get into season 1. The first episode is titled It's About Time. We open on the Marlowe twins wreaking havoc on the White House until they're stopped by the Guardians of the Globe. After the fight ends, it transitions into us meeting Mark for the first time. Mark is actually the son of one of the members of the Guardians, though he was not officially a member, Nolan Grayson, aka Omni-Man. And Mark has been waiting for a couple of years now for his powers to kick in, and they haven't yet, up until one day while he's at work. They kick in while he's trying to throw the trash away. And then his dad starts to train him, basically, and it gets brutal at some points in the episode, up until we end up on quite possibly the biggest twist so far on the show, when Omni-Man decides to attack the Guardians and kills every single one of them. This is the end of episode 1, and it transitions us into episode 2, titled Here Goes Nothing. So basically we're dealing with the aftermath of episode 1. Nolan is at the hospital, being the only surviving member of the Guardians. So while he's still in the hospital, an alien race named the Flaxens start attacking Earth. And that's where we meet the teen team. Adam, Eve, Rex, Robot, and the rest. And we basically go through like 3 rounds of fighting where the Flaxens get beat, they run away, and then they come back again a few days later to attack again, and the cycle just continues until Nolan gets out of the hospital and gets better, and he annihilates the Flaxens. And episode 2 is also where we meet Ellen the alien, voiced by Seth Rogen. Episode 3, titled Who You Calling Ugly, starts at the Guardian's funeral with Nolan making a speech. CISO, who is in charge of the GDA, which is basically the managing company for the Guardians, tasks Robot with finding and forming the new Guardians team. And Eve finds out that Rex has been cheating on her with Duplicate. And in the meanwhile, Mark has been going through his own thing where he's developing a crush for this girl named Amber, and he finally gets her number. And another twist in episode 3 is when Robot breaks the Marlowe twins, the ones we met in episode 1, out of prison. Episode 4, Neil Armstrong, Eat Your Heart Out. This episode is basically Mark going to Mars to protect a group of astronauts that are going there to research. And the astronauts end up getting abducted by the Martians. where we get introduced to the idea of sacreds, which are mind controlling organisms that work in a hive, that have a hive mind. So after the meeting with the Martians and them explaining basically what sacreds are, the Martians say that they have to kill the astronauts because they are in danger of being taken over by the sacreds. But then Mark manages to get them to escape. But in the escape, one astronaut gets left behind and his body gets taken over by a sacred. This will be more important in season 2. So back on Earth, Debbie and Nolan reconnect for the first time in years because Mark is away. And Cecil realizes that Nolan is actually the one who killed the Guardians. While Robot goes and steals Rex's DNA. We'll find out later in the season what for. So this takes us into episode 5, titled That Actually Hurt, where Debbie finds Damien Darkblood's notebook. Damien Darkblood is a demon detective who was basically tasked with finding who killed the Guardians. She also finds Nolan's bloody suit that he wore while he killed the Guardians. Robot approaches the Maulers and gives them the task of creating him basically a new body. Mark is approached by Titan, Titan who we met in episode 1, but we didn't really get into him a lot. This time his story is more like expanded, and he tells Mark that there's a guy named Machine Head that he owes money, and it's getting him to work for him and do things that are illegal and things that he doesn't want to do. So he is asking for Mark's help in fighting Machine Head. So in the ensuing fight, after the Titan and Mark have conjured a plan together, it goes to shit basically because they get their asses beat. But almost at the last minute when Mark is about to get his ass handed to him, the Guardians pop up. But it's not really of much help because there's this guy named Battle Beast who just tore everyone up. And so Mark gets scooped up by the GDA ambulances basically, and he's taken to the hospital. So this takes us into episode 6, titled You Look Kinda Dead. Mark, Amber, and William visit Upstate University for a tour basically. I'd say in the entire season 1, this episode is probably the tamest one out of all of them. But while they're at Upstate University, they meet a guy named D.A. Sinclair, who is a cyborg maker basically, but they didn't know it at the time. D.A. abducts Rick, who is William's crush, and he turns him into a cyborg. So while they're still in Upstate University, in one of the ensuing attacks after Rick has been turned into a cyborg, Mark has to come as Invincible to save the day basically. William figures out Mark's identity basically, and then DA gets arrested. Meanwhile, Debbie took Nolan's suit to Art Rosenbaum, who's a superhero suit maker, and he basically confirms that Nolan struck first and Nolan is the one that actually was the aggressor. And in the end credit scene of episode 6, the Maulers exhume Immortal's body to bring him back to life. So this takes us into episode 7, titled We Need to Talk. So now that Cecil and the GDA have basically confirmed that Nolan was the one who killed the Guardians, they scoop up Debbie and bring her to their building basically for protection. In the meantime, Nolan, sort of figuring out that he's been caught, is looking for Mark to essentially explain to him his side of the story. At this time, Mark is unaware of everything that's going on right now. So Cecil summons the Guardians and tells them to hang tight. On the other side of the story, Mark and Amber have been going through a rough patch because Amber has figured out that Mark has been lying to her, and he also tells her his secret identity, and she breaks things off. So while Mark is his breakup with Amber, he goes to Eve to sort of like talk, and while they're flying, they run into Nolan fighting a kaiju. Obviously, Mark wants to help his dad. Mark ends up trying to fight with him. But the Maulers have succeeded in reviving Immortal's body, and the only thing on his mind was Nolan. So Immortal wakes up and he flies and he goes to where Nolan, and he finds Nolan, and they fight again. And Nolan kills Immortal again, but this time in front of Mark. This is where episode 7 ends. And episode 8, the final episode of season 1, titled Where I Really Come From. That's where Nolan basically unravels his whole entire life backstory of his home planet Viltrum. So after Nolan explains that his job here on Earth was to take it over, Mark gets overcome with anger and they start fighting. But because Nolan is much stronger than Mark, he beats his ass. He beats his ass so many times and in so many different locations. But near the end of the fight, they're in a mountain, like some snowy mountains, and he punches him so hard that the punch reverberates and comes back as an avalanche that like closed, okay, that killed a bunch of people. And this isn't even counting all the people who died accidentally from all those other locations. So just before he's about to deal his final blow to his son, Mark says, and this shakes him out of the state he's in and flies out of Earth and into space. And we'll catch up to him in season 2. So after Mark's stint at the hospital, he and Amber reconcile and they fix their things, and we get a little few teasers of what season 2 is gonna have in store for us. Yo, editing Seyr here. I just realized I didn't make an outro for this video. I made one for part 2 though, which is kind of what I'm here to plug. Part 2, which is essentially me covering season 2, will be on YouTube the next Wednesday. Yeah, September 5th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Otherwise, peace.